Good morning. Let's see if the internet is working. Okay, I hear audio. I see some video. I think we're good to go. As you know, I have an extensive team pulling this entire global production together, and I just want to check on them, make sure that they have everything under control. And it appears they do. Good morning, Mo. Good afternoon, evening. So, it is a busy Friday, so I am going to get straight in it and sip your latte, your cappuccino, your finest espresso. That is good stuff. Okay, ask any questions. I have my own questions for you at the very end. It is a BC project management series of questions. So send a question, comment on Twitter, YouTube, or Twitch, and let's communicate. Say hi. So the weekend was amazingly a rare my rare weekend of maintenance catch up. Stuff piles up and I'm like, oh gosh, every time I see it, I'm like, oh, I need to do that. I walk by it and, I got to do other things. And I came back from El Salvador with some illness for multiple weeks. I was sick, and then the kids started school and they brought home colds, and I've been sick. So I just have not had the energy to do anything. Even though I had some type of cold, I somehow found the energy to catch up on maintenance this weekend. And bonus points to anyone who knows what this device is. This is I think, is a very rare device in a residential environment. And it is because I am lazy. Because I do not want, one, I don't pay for someone to maintain my pool because I don't even know how much it costs, but it's not too hard. And two, I don't want to have to constantly put chlorine in my pool, and the tablets are a mess. They have their own problems. So I only use liquid chlorine in my pool, and a pool guy recommended this device. This is a commercial chlorine pump. It is a peristaltic pump, kind of like I think it's not necessarily an IV drip machine, but a transfusion machine in a hospital that pumps the blood or so you'll notice the wheels, and so it needed some maintenance. It's I think it's over 10 years old now, roughly 10 years. And I have to do maintenance every year, and then this is its major PM period. So I had to rewire it because I had to relocate it. So that's why the wires are open. So I had to get a new cord, extend the wires, rewire it, put it back in, and then I had to replace the Tygon tube, hose, whatever that thing is. Apparently some super special material. So I had to replace that, replace all the hoses, and replace the tri-roller wheel in the center. So it didn't take long. It wasn't that hard. And maintenance got done, cleaned it up, re-lubed it, and it's ready to go for another year. So that was really nice to get done. That's been haunting me for, gosh, I think over a year. And then, if you recall my prior live stream where I talked about the unique batteries in the 2007 Volkswagen that we bought for my daughter, ordered the batteries. They came from O'Reilly Auto Parts, and put the $600 6-volt batteries in the car. So probably saved myself $200 by doing it myself. Wasn't hard, took less than 30 minutes, very simple to pop them in, replace them. And the two prior batteries were just dying. It was dated October 2022. So they were less than 2 years old. And because the car was parked a lot, I think that just wore the batteries out. So we're going to try to drive the car. I now have a $200 6-volt battery charger that we can pop on the batteries once a week or something, maybe on weekends, and try and maintain these things to see how long they last. They are known to fail, unfortunately. And that was my weekend maintenance catch-up. It felt very good. I don't know about you, but when I am able to do maintenance and clean things up and get stuff working, replace batteries, fix electronics, get a server rebuilt, whatever, it does feel very gratifying. The weekly projects, I don't really have clear projects this last week or this coming week. We just have a bunch of little stuff going on, which is actually a little harder. It's really hard to focus when you're scattered between 5 or 6 things. And I am working every single day to work with the full-time interns in Berlin, El Salvador. So we have a morning call every single morning. We have an afternoon call to check in at the end of the day. We are starting with American accent training. If you are familiar with Spanish and English, completely different fundamental sounds. The vowels are just different. Spanish has its very clear set of rules for vowels. English, you may know, is a complete mess in terms of vowels and pronunciation. So we are working on that every single day. They are doing their typing practice. They're really progressing very well and completing their typing.com lessons. And they are both, the goal is they have one more week to get up to 60 words per minute touch typing. Don't know if they'll quite make it in 1 week, but they're very close. So they're doing great on touch typing. And what else? I am doing my Spanish classes twice a week. It is kicking my booty. I get it. It's just really, really, it's just a lot of information to absorb twice a week, and the need to practice is tough. I need to practice numbers. I've got some basics down, but boy, it is a monumental amount of information to learn a language. It's just crazy. Very humbling. It's good to have that reminder of how hard it is to learn. It's a constant reminder. And then I need to work on a couple PTE estimates. We have one pending for some custom fields on a customer card. We get these clusters of requests for the same thing. So we now have multiple requests related to sending documents, sales documents like invoices and statements, and how to best manage those delivery emails. And some customers are okay with the document layout feature and setting up those records, but they want an API. Some customers say, I don't even want to open that window. I want a field on my customer for invoices and statements that automatically creates the document layouts. So I'm like, are you really sure you want this? You could just click and add it and set it up. But yeah, interesting. We've had 2 or 3 of those requests come in the last 2 weeks. So I don't know why these things happen, but yeah, let me know if you have customers with very specific requests or they're very picky about how they want the document layout records set up, whether they don't want to open that window, whether they want it automated through some other routine. Like, is this normal? I guess it is, but anyway. Let's see. Oh, big celebration. PTE workflow. So Ted says users want the easy button. Yes, I get the easy button thing. And to be fair, one of these customers is coming over from Dynamics GP. And in Dynamics GP, you had the customer card and you had a dedicated statement email address, and you didn't have document layouts or the complexity of that. You just had statement email, and that's where it went. I don't even know where invoice email address came from. I don't recall, but that customer says, well, we just had a field on the customer for statement email. Can you make it work? It's like, sure, if you want to pay to have us develop that PTE to put the statement email right on the customer and we manage document layout on the back end, okay, like, are you sure you want that? And they're like, yep. Okay, cool. My developer's like, okay, I'll develop it. So the big confetti-worthy announcement is our PTE workflow automation. We had been testing it for the last couple of weeks, and I finally got the final step done, which we realized we wanted email notifications. So when my developer does a new release of a PTE or brand new PTE or updates, whatever, changes, new release, it gets, we have a build pipeline in DevOps. We use Cosmo Alpaca build pipelines. So it does our full build, automated testing, everything fully remote on their hosted environment. The PTE artifact gets saved in DevOps under the artifacts section. But as you may know, that is a horrible place to put PTEs as an ultimate destination. I do not want anyone else going into our DevOps to dig 7 levels deep to pull out an artifact. That's just silly. So we want to surface that artifact. So my developer actually troubleshooted and got it working. We have a flow, Power Automate flow. It pulls the artifact out of DevOps, grabs the blob, grabs a file name, saves it. We just did initial testing and said, well, let's drop it into our dev environment SharePoint site. So we did that as a test just to get the first step working. So the PTE app file gets dropped into our SharePoint site. We said, cool, first step. Then we drop a copy on our consulting SharePoint site, which is completely different tenant, different environment. So that's why we wanted to automate this, because we're multi-organizations working together. So it drops it on our consulting SharePoint site. They were able to see it. They're like, cool, we like this. But then we were still having to email them to say, hey, new release available, because we didn't have notifications. So I finally pulled down the last piece, and that was to add email notifications. And they said that they got an email notification this morning. I haven't even seen it since I haven't even checked my email, but I'm told it is somewhere in here. And oh, there it is. Okay, I can't show it to you because it has our top secret customer information on it, but simple email says, hey, this extension for this customer, this PTE, this version is available in SharePoint. Go to it, do testing, whatever needs to be done. So I'm super happy about that, fully automated. From clicking on check-in, we have automated build pipeline, we have dropping to SharePoint and email notifications. Just awesome. Chivo, as we might say in El Salvador. Okay, and Monday, lunes. I had a call with a customer regarding an application that I've sold for 12 years. And this constantly happens. I mentioned it before, but even after 12 years, I spoke with this partner who says, well, can you do this? Can you add this feature? And I'm like, okay, you realize that I've been selling this product for 12 years, I think over 150 customers, not like a huge product, very simple. No one has ever asked me for this. So they're like, yeah, we understand. This customer has some funky setup. They have multiple AP accounts, like multiple, not just 2, like 5 or something, 5 accounts payable accounts. And they need my tool to identify which AP account is involved with this payment, with this invoice. And I'm like, okay, so kind of dreading digging into code, but it's not that hard. It's just, zero ROI on this customization. So they'll pay for it, but it's just not something you want to do when you know there's literally zero demand for a feature in an application. And this is a common thing where you see, say on open source forums or on feature request forums, people are like, oh, we really need this feature. And you're just like, what? Like, you've got to be the only person. Meanwhile, there's this feature, like, there's a software I use, and you have to manually click on the backup button to back up the configuration. You're supposed to do this daily, if not like weekly at the latest. They don't have an automated or scheduled backup routine. And it's like, come on, man, this should be top of the list because this backup is critical. If this Linux host goes down and you don't have a config backup, everything is gone. There's just no recovery possible. You have to have a recent backup, like very recent. And they still don't have automated backup. So prioritization of feature requests is a constant challenge. And Monday, I attempted to do ThinkPad prep. I set up 3 new ThinkPads, my eBay ThinkPads on the dining room table. Sadly, they are still there. I've had like a cold all week, and I'm just like, so they're still piled up on the table. My family's like, Dad, can you like get rid of these? But yeah, so I need to do that this weekend, hopefully. We had Monday night dev review call, reviewed our projects, reviewed our pending tasks, and reprioritize. And then on Tuesday, Martes, it was just nonstop calls. I don't know what happened on Tuesday. It was just a bore of nonstop Teams meetings, Zoom calls, Spanish class. And I encountered, while speaking with the El Salvador interns, we accidentally stumbled across this series of weird BC quirks. So I bring you a BC quirk interlude. You are in BC trying to do something simple. You're just trying to email an invoice. How hard could it be? Your license does not grant you the following permissions on table data 5065 interaction log entry insert. What? Like what? I'm just trying to email an invoice. What is this? To view details about your permissions, see the effective permissions page, blah, 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 blah. Like, as far as I could tell, this is an absolutely meaningless, erroneous, irrelevant, just like useless error message. Thankfully, turns out I've encountered it before. I just forgot. But thankfully, there are a few blog posts. So I just Googled the entire message and I quickly came across Stephen Render's blog post from March of 2022. And this error can occur in multiple situations. It is not just emailing an invoice. How do I solve this error? License does not grant you blah, 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 indirect insert. And this, like he says, when you deploy a PTE from VS Code, this error can occur. So who knows? There are probably dozens of different scenarios. What's the solution? I've done this before. I've run into it. Once I read his article, I'm like, you've got to be kidding me. It's not obvious that this is the problem because the error messages are so random and they occur in so many different places. This is the problem. If you have an extra company or a non-configured company or a demo company or an unlicensed company or something, if you have these extra companies in your BC environment, it triggers this error in any number of situations. I typically am just working in a demo BC environment, sandbox production environment, but it's in a demo tenant, I should say. And by default, my company is sitting there. The solution is to just delete my company. Then everything goes fine. It's like, you've got to be kidding me. We're not in my company. We don't use my company. We're in Cronus. It still triggers this error in the extra unlicensed company. So then I'm like, okay, I'm going to go open the companies window and try to delete my companies. What happened? My delete button is grayed out. And the Berliners are on the phone with me. They're like, that's weird. I'm in the same page. The delete button is visible for me. And I'm like, I set up this environment. I am the Azure tenant admin. I'm the Microsoft 365 admin. I created their user accounts. I cannot delete a company and they can. They're like, yeah. David's like, click. I just deleted it for you. I'm like, wait. I'm trying to figure this out. So it worked fine for them. And then it dawned on me. Like, I don't know how, just I've been dealing with this recently, just setting up users. I said, Jocelyn, why can't I delete, but you can? And she thought for a second, and she says, license. I take full credit for being the fabulous instructor that has endowed the tremendous amount of knowledge in my Berlin interns, where Jocelyn can see this absolutely obscure problem and say, license? And she says, admin center. Now, I'm hoping she meant 365 admin center. She was absolutely right. I had set up this environment and I had not assigned myself a Business Central for IW's demo license. I was able to log in. I'm able to create Business Central, 365 users, which then sync to Business Central. I am able to do everything in this environment for the last several months. I don't even remember which tenant this was in, but I did not have a license. It let me do everything. I had super permissions, but as soon as I tried to delete a company, it appeared. And then I realized if I go into, say, a customer, I couldn't edit a customer record. It was read only. I had no edit button or delete button. It's like, whoa. Turns out I was logged into Business Central, navigating, reading. I could access anything, even though I didn't have a license. And this all occurred in a 15-minute period from your license does not grant you permissions because the My Company, all the way through to me not having a license. Like, I was like, what is going on here? It was just this random string of events while the two interns are on the phone with me. Like, what are you losing your mind, Steve? I'm like, I swear I'm not going insane. So they learned some really interesting, obscure, rare lessons, but this is the second time I've had the My Company issue. So heads up with that. Okay, moving on to Wednesday, miércoles. Morning call with Berlin. They are continuing to build the BC training curriculum. So a little more on that, but David I'm handing the torch to him, and he started by creating new PowerPoint slides on emailing. Yeah, that's how that BC court conversation started. I was trying to show him emailing invoices. We ran into all that. So he created PowerPoint presentations on configuring email, connecting to your Microsoft 365, and setting everything up so you could email invoices. And I have a question for all 3 of you, 10 of you watching. I have been on Teams calls, and the most annoying thing, it's not just Teams, but it's happening frequently in Teams. The most annoying thing is, apparently, my connection with the Teams call is cutting out. And they're like, oh, I can't hear you, Steve, or I couldn't hear you for 10 seconds. And I don't know about this, obviously. I don't know if it is my actual internet connection. I don't know if it's the fiber from my house to the box, from the local neighborhood box, the ISP. You know, I am on a call with 2 people from El Salvador. There are lots of hops where the issue could be occurring. Now, they continue to talk to each other without interruption, but they're literally using the same ISP in the town of Berlin, El Salvador. So that doesn't necessarily surprise me. I don't know how Teams is routing the traffic. I would love to see where the interruption is coming. Now, Ted says run a command prompt with ping, but that doesn't necessarily tell me anything. I could ping something. I could have a perfect internet, perfect ping to, google.com in the United States, but I don't know where the routing is occurring with this Teams call. Now, I'm assuming it's not possible, just the logistics and the complexity of trying to do a trace route for all of the hops for a Teams call when Teams wouldn't even know where that traffic is being routed. But it would be great to see like this geographic line, Steve, Berlin, El Salvador, or let's see, Berlin, Steve, and C, each hop along the way, say green, 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 red. So it has nothing to do with me, my local internet connection, my ISP. It's 3 hops up the chain. Maybe it's in Panama that there's a data issue, or maybe it's getting routed through the Brazil Microsoft data center. And Berlin is fine to Brazil, Steve is fine to Brazil, but it's Brazil where the latency is occurring. So, yeah. So anyway, clearly there is a connectivity issue, and clearly it's interrupting, and everyone's like, oh, Steve, your internet is the problem. Well, I don't think it is. And then I'll use Teams and it's Zoom, and other people are dropping. So anyway, that's what I would love to have, is something that shows me this map of where my internet traffic is being routed, like trace route on steroids for each application. And this week I got an Uber driver. So this is what, this is kind of the dream, right? Have someone driving you around like a chauffeur. So I have a 16-year-old chauffeur who is learning to drive. And finally, I have an Uber driver. And I'm no longer terrified, just a little nervous. But yeah, it's going well. And this is a 2007 Volkswagen, so it has a 2007 stereo in it. Basically, it has a 6 CD changer. Remember those? Yes. And it still works miraculously, still works perfectly. It's pretty amazing. So hats off to the Volkswagen OEM, whoever manufactured that thing, Blaupunkt maybe. And But yeah, CD changer. I do have some CDs, but they're ancient, and there's no backup camera. There's no, Apple CarPlay. No streaming. So probably okay for now, but like it's just driving me nuts when I have to drive the car. So I ordered a new car stereo from Crutchfield. So that will be a future weekend project to install a new car stereo, 4 new speakers, and a backup camera. That's going to take a couple days. It's a fair amount of work. So, take a sip. Cybersecurity news. Boy, it's endless. Like, if you want to have a job that just is ongoing and never ends, cybersecurity is the way to go. I swear. You could have, if you have decent intelligence and a pulse and can show up, I'm assuming people need help with cybersecurity. So this is called a corporate BEC, business email compromise, I believe. It could have had telephone component, but business email compromise, someone was contacted, someone posing to be an executive or a vendor, whatever, and they were asked to perform wire transfers to this supplier. And over multiple wire transfers, they sent this is just what they couldn't recover, over $60 million, I believe. Yeah, Luxembourg-based company that produces carbon black manufacture. So even after they were able to recoup some funds from the banks or whatever, they have essentially written off $60 million in unrecovered fraudulent wired. And I mean, can you imagine the poor treasury management person, the AP clerk or whoever that clicked the button and said send? I don't know how many transactions it was. I don't know like how large the transactions were, but in a multi-billion-dollar company, a $2 million wire transfer to a vendor is not uncommon. Like it's like it's the $250 payment that's like, what? This is annoying. So really, really staggering. I don't quite understand the structure, but they're Luxembourg-based, but they filed this with the SEC. So might have just been a U.S. SEC requirement for their U.S. investment arm. But anyway, heads up, folks. And then last week I talked about, I wasn't sure I had heard about a Google compromise with the Google sign-in. And that's why I don't use it, because I've absolutely never used any of the sign in with Google, sign in with Facebook, sign in with Apple, or whatever they're called. Absolutely never, ever used it, because if for some reason my Google email is compromised, they potentially have the keys to the kingdom with any account that I've connected using sign in with Google. So absolutely would never use that. And this is exactly why. So Google says it recently fixed an authentication weakness, allowed crooks to circumvent email verification required to create a Google workspace. So what would happen was someone figured out that they could create the Google Workspace account for someone who had a Gmail account, thereby essentially owning your Gmail account. So let's say I have, Steve's googleaccount.com. Someone could create a fake Google Workspace business account, I believe, claim my domain, stevesgoogleemail.com, essentially take control of that, take control of my email, and then use that to authenticate through Google Sign In with Google. Something to that effect. I found very little information, but this is the most authoritative article I found. Krebs on Security, Brian Krebs. So there's a QR code for that. Check it out. I would never, ever use Sign In with Google for anything. It's absolutely not trustworthy. And a friend has recently been hit with constant attacks on his Google account for the last several months. It's several a week now where he has taken my advice. He is dumping Google. He's signing up with Proton for Proton Mail, and he is switching over 100% to simple login. So just like me, he's going 100% simple login aliases. He's eliminating all of his Google activity, Gmail, everything. It is just such a massive security vulnerability now, because it is just a single point of failure, and it's if someone has your email address, which has been in numerous data breaches by now, you just have no control. You've lost your identity as a proxy for your account access at banks, in financial institutions, healthcare, you name it. So I strongly recommend getting rid of any free services like Google, Yahoo, etc. But that's just me, Okay, Doug, regional meetups, plural. My apologies to Houston, Texas. No offense, but it wasn't intentional. I only heard about the Dublin, Ohio regional meetup on August 27th and 28th. Well, I just learned this week on a Doug planning committee call, there is a Houston, Texas regional meetup, August 29th. So, hey, if you are in the United States, somewhere around Ohio, Texas, head on over to Dublin or Houston. Head on over to dynamicsusergroup.com meetup and sign up and, have a nice road trip to Dublin or Houston. I'm sure they're lovely this time of year. And go join the meetup. Yeah. So my apologies to Texas. There are 2 regional meetups coming up in the next week. Other upcoming events, Próximos Eventos. Days of Knowledge Americas, again, September 12th, 14th in Atlanta, coming up just a few weeks from now. Summit North America, October 13th. It will be here before I know it. Wow. I have my flight booked, my hotel booked. I need to double check in the hotel. Pretty sure I did that. Directions EMEA in November, Vienna, Austria. And amazingly, call for speakers is still open until September 30th. Pretty crazy. So head on over to sessionize.com, directions-EMEA-2024, and submit a session idea to go to Vienna, Austria. Thursday, Jueves. I checked Twitter and I saw this discussion from AJ Kaufman. New blog post with a deep dive into the BC API schema version 2.0. And I'm like, what? Wait, what? You mean version 2.0, like in the URL 2.0? No, this is actually different. And I don't know if I knew what this was. I've taken AJ's class. Maybe he mentioned it at the time. Maybe it's been mentioned in the interim. But I honestly, if you would have asked me about this last week, I would have no idea what you're talking about. This is apparently an OData parameter called schema version, $ under or lowercase, all one word, schema version. Apparently it's implicit and part of the API. And in Business Central, up until V24, it was, well, I don't know when it switched to Schema 2.0, but the BC APIs have been using Schema version 2.0 for quite a while by default. But strangely, custom APIs that you develop for BC, Web API v2.0 APIs, have been defaulting to Schema version 1.0. I'm pretty sure I did not know this and was completely unaware of this, or had happily forgotten about this and purged it from my brain due to capacity constraints. But as of version 24, Wave 1, 2024 Wave 1, I guess is what it's called, Microsoft switched, so the default schema version for custom APIs going forward all of a sudden would be schema version 2.0. So if you developed a custom API and you had vendors or external parties calling your custom API, if you were using an enum and perhaps a few other things, that would break as of version 24.0. And so now, in order to maintain Schema 1.0 compatibility, Schema version 1.0, those callers, those external parties or vendors would have to add Schema version 1.0 as a URL parameter or OData filter parameter. So I won't try to explain it because I'm only partially understand it. So go over to AJ's Twitter feed, go to his blog. There's a QR code for his blog post explaining this fun breaking change. And yeah, I was completely unaware. Apparently he's been dealing with it for a while, but I was not aware. So thank you, AJ. And I also saw this BC change feature. I don't even know when this came out. BC secret text data type. So I first noticed this the other day on Natalie's, our BC Docs librarian, on her Twitter feed, and she referenced 3 Learn articles using Key Vault secrets in Business Central extensions, which if that doesn't make sense to you, if you aren't just totally dialed in on Key Vault secrets in Business Central extensions, you need to get over to this article and read it. If you are a dev and you're using any type of secrets, if this isn't just blatantly obvious what this is talking about, please do some studying. Learn Azure Key Vault, learn how to pull Key Vault secrets in your extensions, and learn how to store them properly in your code. And this was new to me, but there is the protected storage at a minimum if you're going to maintain those secrets. So then there's a security considerations article she references, and then lastly, the new article, Use Secret Text. And apparently this is a more secure method of storing these secrets in memory or in variables so that they are not exposed to AL debugger or snapshot debugging. I wasn't aware of this potential vulnerability vector risk of exposing these secrets, but there you go. So Azure Key Vault, and you should also understand what a HSM, hardware security module, HSM-backed Azure Key Vault is, especially if you're doing code signing certificates. Read the security considerations article and learn about secret text and protected storage in Business Central. Just should be minimum level of requirement for any BC developer who is storing anything like API keys, private keys, anything like that. Okay. Coincidentally, this popped up in my Twitter feed, and this was from Eric on August 19th. So it was a day or two before Natalie posted these articles, but I just noticed it the other day. So Eric has a timely video on on the secret text data type, where he talks about using the secret text new data type in BC. So head on over to Eric's YouTube channel to check that out. And I know I've said this a gazillion times, and I even mentioned it previously today about my friend who's getting off of Google due to the constant barrage of attacks he's getting on his accounts and password reset attempts. So he is under constant attack. So this was my first, what I'm calling my first suspected data breach or data disclosure of an account that I have created using simple login aliases. So yesterday morning, I saw in my email, my simple login Proton Mail email, I saw that I got this spam. And if I get any spam in this account, I know that, or anything suspicious, I know that it's spam resulting from a simple login alias. Like, it cannot be anything else, because I definitely didn't sign up to get this spam. This is some Southern snack box, no idea what it is. It appears to be a legitimate business. No idea if this is a legitimate email. It looks like it is composed based on some marketing email template. It's not a scamming or obvious phishing email, but like, why? And it came from a Gmail address, as you can see. Like, who runs their business and does these marketing emails off of a Gmail address? So it doesn't look malicious, but it's clearly spam. So how did they get my email? Well, the email that this was sent to was for a nonprofit animal rescue foundation that I donated to. Now, why would a nonprofit animal rescue foundation be sending me emails about a snack box? Doesn't make sense. So either they have sold their donor email list to someone, or they have had a data breach. So I went to their website. Turns out they use WordPress. Hello, you're just begging for a data breach and a security issue with WordPress, especially given the plugins involved. They even have a login system for donors to see donations and invoices. So at this point, I haven't received a response from them. I'm assuming they've had a data breach. This got sold to some junk email marketing firm. That's my pessimistic assumption, but turns out there's no excuse on this one, because I got 2 spam this spam on 2 different email aliases because I have donated to this animal foundation twice. I didn't realize I'd already created an alias, so I created a second completely random email alias. Like, there is no way. It's 5 random characters on the suffix of the email. So like twice simple login aliases, 100%, as I saw on a TV show, Dead to Rights. Like, there's no explaining this other than my information was exposed or shared with this organization. So, ouch. Excuse me. Little cold, lingering. Ow, my back hurts now. Okay, so this was the first confirmed, like, just clear evidence of my information being disclosed through simple login aliases. And it was just blatantly obvious to track where it came from. So that was really cool. Okay, Friday, Viernes, today, live stream. Have a call with the Berlin interns to start out the morning with some Spanish-English discussion and then what they're going to be working on. And then I jump on a customer call for their BC implementation. We have a weekly project management call. And excellence update coming up. The Berlin interns are building. They are now taking on the task of building the Business Central training curriculum for ERP Center of Excellence update so that I am no longer the sole bottleneck. We now have 2 new sets of eyes on this. So they are studying BC, like the BC quirks that I talked about a few slides ago. They are creating the BC training presentations on that content. And then they will be creating exercises for students to learn the feature or topic. And we are also collecting sample BC support requests from our consulting team, like, hey, this person needs permissions for this, or hey, why can't I access that? So those would be, say, permission set issues, all sorts of sample support requests. So that's how they're learning BC. And they are going to then go on and teach BC. So they will be teaching BC soon. And again, I am going to Berlin September 21st through the 25th. So busy times on the ERP Center of Excellence front. And in the fun recurring theme of appreciating expertise, if you want to blow your mind, just have your mind blown, head on over on YouTube to a channel called Precision Transmission. And I don't know how this ended up in my feed, just like anything else. I seem to be getting automotive car things because, like, the things people do with cars, I'm just like, you're kidding me. You swapped out an engine in 60 minutes or 30 minutes or whatever. Like, how is that even possible? So some crazy automotive stuff on YouTube that I just find fascinating, even though I don't do it myself. And this popped in. This guy's name is Richard, and I don't know how many decades he's been doing this, but it is a long time. He can walk you through every single part, every spring, every plunger, every bolt, every little nook, cranny, crevice, hole, channel, clutch, every single thing on any transmission from the 1950s to, let's say, the 90s or 2000. So just pick any of his videos and watch him pull apart a transmission. And he does it in his sleep. And he'll tell you, you got to remember to look out because you see this little tiny hole here. Well, that little tiny hole here, if you drill it out, that allows the fluid to go to this channel and it causes this behavior to change in this transmission. So when you get your rebuild kit on this model of Ford Expedition, it's going to, like, well, just look at that thing. It looks like a rat's maze. Like, it's insane. And he knows exactly which hole on hundreds of these things. Like, I'm just in awe. I don't know how someone can hold that much information in their brain, even if they are an expert, but he rattles it off like the alphabet. It's nothing to him. And it's just boring to him. He just says it without even thinking, stream of consciousness. truly incredible. So just pull up Precision Transmission YouTube channel, pick a video and watch him pull apart a transmission. If you're like me, you will have no idea what he's talking about. You won't know a single part in any of this. Like, you kind of get the concept, but I'm like, whoa. He'll tell you what parts wear, how they wear, how you could reinstall things backwards or wrong. He'll tell you how things fail, how things wear out, where the likely problems will be, what the modifications and customizations are to these transmissions to improve reliability, improve performance. Like, absolutely mind-melting skill set there. So, like, I can just watch one of his videos, have no idea what he's talking about, but be in absolute awe of what he's showing. Okay, finally, wrapping this up, because I need to get on a call. Estimating BCPTEs, easy for you to say. So, how many of you develop per tenant extensions? And how many of you take the time, if you're internal, how many of you take the time to come up with an estimate so that you have budget to actuals and you understand how you're doing in terms of estimating, scoping, requirements, development, testing, project management, whatever. If you're a partner, I'm assuming you're doing estimates on your PTEs. And I find it challenging, and my developer and I, we've been working together for years, and we both have over 20, 30 years of experience each. And we still, to this day, find it challenging to estimate because almost everything we do is new and custom. Occasionally we repeat a PTE, but it's not often that we do the exact same thing twice. Usually there's a twist. So here's an example PTE and how we tried to estimate it. So customer wants some customization. So we said, okay, we always start with project setup. You got to open VS Code. You got to create a project. You got to get your folders, your base files, your git ignore. You got to check the code in, whatever you need to get set up for that project. And this, you could say maybe this is 1 hour, but this includes having your Git repo set up. And we use DevOps. So having a DevOps repository, having your folder structure set up, have scaffolding out your testing, automated testing infrastructure that you need in your project, full project setup. We can do now, thanks to Cosmo Alpaca, we can do it in roughly 1 hour, my developer estimates. He now has a checklist where he goes through, sets up his project, does all the Cosmo Alpaca setup. He says he can get through it in about an hour. Previously, it would have been like over multiple days. It was a nightmare to do manually. So, not sponsored, Cosmo Alpaca. If you want to save hours, like, just check it out. You don't even have to use their development container feature, just their build pipeline feature. Massive ROI, instant ROI. So we just round this up in case we need to do a special setup. So 2 hours to set up the project. And that gives us a little leeway to deal with any issues or, container issues. So 2 hours, let's start there. Well, then in this case, we had a small table extension, add a couple of fields. No big deal, but I don't like to estimate down anything less than an hour because we just don't have that level of precision. This is a small PTE, but I'm not going to do quarter hour, half hour. I just gave up on that because we cannot deliver precisely enough to hit a half hour target. So we just say, okay, roughly 1 hour. Is it less than that? Probably. But when we consider potential changes, refinements, whatever, we say, okay, 1 hour, that's our minimum task time. Then for that table extension, we have a page extension to expose those fields. Again, 1 hour. Does it really take 1 full hour? Maybe not, but if you've ever done dev, you factor in a little buffer time. So again, minimum 1 hour. Then this particular PTE had setup configuration options. So we know we needed a setup table. So again, 1 hour. Does it take that? Maybe, but you got to think through, what do we need in the setup table? What are we calling it? What fields do we need? And how are we going to incorporate that design? Then we have a setup page to expose our setup table fields. Okay, again, 1 hour minimum. We have some on-insert code. So on our page extension, table extension, the customer says, when I insert a value in this field, I want certain things to automatically occur. So that's what I'm calling our on-insert code. Not terribly complex, but minimum 1 hour. Hopefully that's enough for this relatively simple thing. It's actually creating a record in another table, so it could potentially go over an hour, but we're like, well, we should be able to pull that off in an hour. Well, then there was on update, and a couple rules around this. When I update this, don't touch this, but update that. So we have few if statements going on there. So my developer said, well, let's just do 2 hours because I could run in some hassles there if there's some dependencies and I have problems updating. Oh, cool. So we do 2 hours. Next, it was not specified in the statement of work that we got, but we said, well, you did on insert, you did on update. What about delete? What do you want us to do if someone clears out that field value? So we got clarification on that. So we need to have on delete code. Okay, got it. And so then we always have some basic testing. And so let's say that's me. Well, I've got to get the extension. I've got to install it in a test environment. I have to have base config to test. I need to do the testing, make sure everything works, check all the dependencies. Minimum 1 hour to just stop and make that work, right? Potentially 2 if I test and then our consulting team tests. And then documentation. So what is the name of the extension? What's the version? What are release notes? What is the deployment process? How do you configure it? How do you set things on the setup page? How do you do a minimum basic end-to-end test? How is this supposed to work? 1 hour for me to pull that Word document together and get that set up. So when you pull all this together, you're talking, and 1 hour project management. That's just kind of a placeholder. Checking with the developer. How's it going? Okay, we have a release. Talk to the consultants. Did you test yet? And, just wrangling the circus on that. So all of that together, that turns out to be 12 hours. And, you could have a simpler PTE that maybe doesn't need a setup table, setup page, maybe doesn't need on delete code, but like 10 to 12 hours is about as low as I think we could go for a PTE starting from scratch. Now, could you quote it for less? Maybe, but that would be like a developer saying, I could code that in 8 hours, 6 hours, whatever. But that would be, are they really dealing with project setup? Does it include multiple events? Does that include testing, documentation, project management? I don't know that we can go much less than 10 to 12 hours on this simplest of PTs. And on the one hand, I don't know. Maybe you say, well, that's a lot, or maybe you say that's very, very low. I'm kind of curious, like what would your minimum be? And like I was saying, how could we shave time off? Maybe we do 1 hour for project setup. Maybe we combine table extension and page extension in 1 hour, setup table down to 1 hour. And we kind of cut things down as much as possible. But really, at the end, even after you've tried to wring time out, you're down to 10 hours on this. Like 10 hours, I'm not going to fight over 1 or 2 hours. And if a customer says 10 hours is unacceptable, like, okay, maybe they're just not ready to invest in that PTE, because if they want us to say 8 hours and we go over to 9, I've been there and it's just a constant argument and a fight, and they won't pay anything because I went over by 1 hour. It's just not worth it for me. And I've done this many years. So what do you think? What is a base estimate for this type of extension? What would you quote to do this from scratch if you just had this statement of work dropped in your lap and you had never done this particular customization before? What would you quote for this PTE? So let me know. And this is a very relevant cartoon, because one of the concerns I have is another partner, another consultant developer that the customer talks to comes in and says, they ripped you off for 12 hours. I could do that in 6 hours. Really? Like, because they're not thinking of the entire life cycle of this project. Are they using Cosmo Alpaca? Are they using DevOps? Are they doing automated testing? Do they have automated builds and automated release pipelines that drop this into SharePoint and send an email? Well, we do. So people who offer secondhand quotes often don't take in the entire project. So I asked this other engineer for his estimate of the effort. His estimate was 1 week less than yours, says the cartoon. Then why don't you get him to do the project? And the response is, he never completes anything on time. Exactly, right? So we're taking responsibility for this project. So our estimate is 12 hours. And it turns out the partner's like, cool, do it. No problem. Sounds good. Let's go. So we have actually completed that as of early this morning, and the email notification went out from our flow that dropped the PTE into our consulting SharePoint. So with that whirlwind tour, it is after 9:30 my time. So have a good weekend. El fin de semana. Oh, I have a phrase. I learned a Spanish phrase. Thank you, Jocelyn, for teaching me. One moment while I pull up my Spanish notes. I learned que tengas un buen fin de semana. I believe that's how it's said. Have a good weekend. So, thank you all for joining. Have a great weekend. Go learn something Business Central. Lots of links in this presentation. Okay, adios.